What is up, everybody? It's Animac here for Anime Uproar, and wow, the MHA manga just dropped a freaking bombshell on all of us. All For One seems to have secretly stolen the most broken quirk in MHA, allowing him to literally turn back time. Deku finally returns, and the first One For All user Yoichi warns him of an imminent attack. And Endeavor gets even more incredible character development. Is this going to be Endeavor's greatest victory, or is this going to be his death? We have to talk about it. It was so crazy, so let's get into it. You guys know how this works. Leave a quick like and comment right now. It helps us out a lot, and it only takes a second. And of course, subscribing and hitting that notification bell is a completely free way of directly supporting the channel. You can also hit me up on Twitter and Instagram at Anime Uproar. Finally, this video will of course contain Boku no Hero manga spoilers, so please proceed with caution. You have been warned. Okay, right off the bat, I have to issue another correction. When I was making my previous chapter review, I was going off the unofficial translation as opposed to the official Viz.com translation. Now, while I do always read the Viz.com translation, it takes me several days to make a video. So if I waited for the official translation, I would have to publish the video many days later, and I know that a lot of you guys wouldn't want to wait that long. Usually both the official and unofficial translations match up very closely, but last week there was a big mistranslation in the unofficial that we need to talk about. During that Endeavor childhood flashback, the unofficial translation stated that he witnessed a man trying to rescue his daughter from a villain, but failing and dying along with the daughter as Endeavor watched in horror. That is traumatic enough in itself, but the official translation confirmed that it was actually even worse. This was not some random guy that Endeavor saw trying to save someone. This was actually Endeavor's own father trying to save an innocent girl from a villain. So when he was a teenager, Endeavor witnessed his own father die right before his eyes in a failed rescue attempt. Now, this doesn't take anything away from the analysis I made of Endeavor's character in my previous chapter review. If anything, this only adds to what I said because it goes even further in terms of explaining how Endeavor came to be the type of father that he eventually became. This gives us an even better explanation for why he became so obsessed with becoming the strongest and surpassing All Might. Endeavor didn't want to suffer the same fate as his father, and he didn't want his children to have to go through what he went through. He believed that he would be weak and vulnerable until the day that he surpassed All Might, and he believed that his own family and children would always be in danger until he finally achieved that goal. And so this fear of sharing his father's fate and putting his own children through the same trauma that he suffered through as a kid is what drove his obsession. And that is what ultimately turned him into the terrible father that he became, even though his main goal was actually to protect his family. Man, I said it before and I'll say it again. Endeavor is by far the best written character in MHA, and it's not even close. Despite being an overpowered superhero and the strongest pro hero in Japan, he is so flawed, so human, and so real. Horikoshi did an absolutely phenomenal job with this man's character arc, and I can't wait to see where things go from here. Speaking of which, let's see where things went from here in the latest chapter of the story. With his mask destroyed and with Endeavor ruthlessly attacking him, All For One is struggling to defend himself. He still appears to be using a shield quirk to keep his body from disintegrating under the force of Endeavor's attacks, but it doesn't look like he'll be able to hold out for much longer. All For One didn't think that Endeavor would be capable of making him relive the humiliation of losing to All Might, but as was the case with All Might, there is nothing more dangerous than a wounded hero, and Endeavor is proving that with his relentless attacks. With the help of Hawks' feathers, Endeavor is able to increase his speed and smash All For One with a vanishing jet burn, which sets almost the entire battlefield on fire. The other heroes who were on the ground are forced to flee the area as the battle between Endeavor and All For One spirals out of control. Endeavor is hoping to finish All For One off with a Prominence Burn attack, but the amount of times he can use this overpowered attack is limited. So Endeavor has to break through all of For One's defenses first using physical attacks before going in for the finisher. Hawks is impressed with the fact that Endeavor is being smart and using strategy again, and he says he's glad that Endeavor managed to regain his composure after going berserk earlier. But Endeavor responds by saying that he is not composed at all. His blood is boiling and he is as angry as he has ever been. But this time he plans to use that anger and that emotion to his advantage. Meanwhile, Kamui Woods warns everyone to evacuate immediately as Endeavor smashes All For One to the ground and then rushes him, attacking wildly and chipping away at All For One's shield. As a man who uses a wood-based quirk, you better believe that Kamui knows he has to get out of there before the fire consumes everything. And he probably saved some lives with his quick timing, both hero lives and villain lives, so props to Kamui. Endeavor then grabs All For One and begins dragging him across the battlefield, leaving nothing but fire and destruction in his wake. Since they are now in close contact, All For One attempts to grab Endeavor and steal his quirk. But Endeavor pulls a Homelander and blasts All For One's hand with beams of fire that emerge from his eyes. Endeavor says that the only thing All For One's hand has ever done is destroy people's lives. But All For One tries to reverse Uno him by saying that he destroyed lives as well. Endeavor doesn't even try to deny it, and he says that Toya, aka Dabi, is a product of his own mistakes. So this means that Endeavor must take responsibility for all of the lives that Toya has taken and destroyed. And even though Endeavor can't change the past, he is determined to use the painful lessons of the past to carve out a better future for his children and all the other heroes. Endeavor is determined to prevail in this battle so that the past sins of his generation don't ruin the future of the next generation. In that moment, we see what looks like an image of the class 1A students as adults. And although we don't get to see them up close, we do see some cool features like Deku having a new long cape and Bakugo apparently wearing two Viking-esque braids in his hair. Or maybe they're not Viking braids, maybe they're like Gaul braids like in Asterix and Obelix. Anyway, Endeavor is prepared to sacrifice everything and bear all of the responsibility and all of the punishment. But he refuses to lose this fight no matter what, because he is determined to keep looking over his sons and helping them find a way towards a better future. And also, presumably, his daughter as well, because he also has a daughter. As Endeavor pledges to keep on hating himself because that hate is what feeds his rage and his power, he grabs All For One in his arms, flies him into the sky, and literally burns him to ashes. Like seriously, All For One's body turns completely black and begins to disintegrate into ashes. And it looks like All For One has finally been destroyed. An exhausted Endeavor is convinced that All For One is dead and that he can't possibly survive this, but Hawks warns him to back away. We then hear All For One's voice, which is messed up in and of itself because this dude should definitely be dead. All For One asks Endeavor whether he really believed that he would be defeated so easily, and that he didn't have a trick up his sleeve. Even though this old body is now expendable for All For One because he is also possessing Shigaraki's fancy new body, he still wanted to use this body to try something out. We then see a panel that shows little Eri and the quirk-destroying bullets that had been made using her blood. And then, in the very next panel, we see that All For One's body is seemingly rebuilding itself from the ashes. More accurately, it seems to be rewinding itself to a state before he had been injured by All Might. And I know this because we see that an eye has appeared on his face, even though All For One didn't have eyes before Endeavor reduced him to ashes. All For One proclaims that heroes are not the only ones who are willing to risk their lives in battle, and the chapter text tells us that, just like heroes, villains are also the most dangerous when they are wounded. As this insanity is happening, we finally see a glimpse of Deku after like 7 or 8 chapters. He is still traveling over the ocean, and suddenly the first user of One For All, Yoichi, manifests behind Deku and tells him that he has a bad feeling. He seems to sense that something bad just happened or is about to happen. Deku then realizes that something is flying towards him, and the narrator states that a mysterious threat is drawing near. Now all we see are multiple small dots that seem to be flying towards Deku, But what are these dots and how did they locate Deku as he is soaring over some random spot in the ocean off the coast of Japan? Are they flying Nomu? Are they other flying villains? Are they some sort of military squadron? Whatever this is, it's definitely serious enough to worry both Deku and Yoichi, although Yoichi may have actually been reacting to what All For One and just did. It is not 100% clear what exactly Yoichi was reacting to, but it is possible that he has some sort of special connection to his brother, so he knew that All For One just pulled off something insane. Speaking of which, by showing us that panel of Eri and the quirk destroying bullets, Horikoshi is heavily implying that All For One somehow got his hands on Eri's insanely overpowered time-reversing quirk called Rewind. Unless Horikoshi is trying to deliberately mislead us with the Eri panel, then we have to assume that All For One found a way to clone Rewind using the samples of Eri's blood and DNA that were located within the quirk destroying bullets. We know that Shigaraki stole some of those bullets from Chisaki, so All For One definitely had access to Eri's blood, even though he didn't have direct access to her. Wait, does this mean that the woman with the white hair inside of All For One really was Eri? It really was her vestige rebelling against All For One? If he managed to clone her quirk using her blood and DNA, that might actually have been her vestige, which is just freaking insane. And in case anyone needs a reminder, Eri's quirk Rewind is a top contender for the most broken and overpowered quirk of all time. It can instantly murder someone by rewinding them out of existence, or it can instantly heal someone by rewinding them to a time before they were injured. And if that wasn't overpowered enough, some have speculated that once Rewind is fully awakened, it could literally rewind all of humanity back to the Stone Age. The crazy thing about Rewind is that everything we've seen from it so far came from a little girl who has very little control of her quirk and who clearly hasn't tapped into its full potential. Now imagine a villain who has the experience of using hundreds of different quirks, successfully taking control of Rewind. The implications here are just staggering. If this really is what's happening right now, if All For One has Rewind, then the only way he can be stopped is if his quirks rebel against him again on the inside. Honestly, I just don't see Endeavor, Hawks, and the other heroes beating him if he can rewind his body back to its prime. I'll be real with you guys, I didn't see this twist with All For One coming. To me, it kind of looked like Endeavor was about to kill All For One as part of his epic redemption arc. But of course, All For One's story wouldn't be over yet because he was still possessing Shigaraki's body. So Endeavor would get a big W, but the story would go on and Shigaraki / All For One would remain the main villain. However, Horikoshi seems to be flipping the script on us, so we might actually see Endeavor dying as part of his redemption arc rather than winning. To be fair, that could also be an incredible finale to his character arc if handled properly, although I'm definitely kind of rooting for Endeavor now after everything he's gone through. What do you guys think? Is Endeavor going to die, or is he going to kill All For One? Speaking of All For One, does he now have Rewind? Was that really Eri's vestige inside of him in the previous chapter? And if so, what does all of this mean for the final war arc? Finally, what is the threat that is suddenly approaching Deku? Since Shigaraki, All For One, and Dabi are presumably busy elsewhere, who is coming after Deku? Is it other villains using Flying Nomu? Is it some military squadron? Don't forget to leave your thoughts down in the comments below. You guys know the drill. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more in the future, leave that quick like and comment. It's free. It takes only a second, but it helps us so much with the YouTube algorithm. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to join the Space Fam. You can also hit us up on Twitter and Instagram at Anime Uproar. I want to give a big thank you to all of our Anime Uproar patrons for making videos like this one possible. Special thank you to Kyle Salisbury. This man is an absolute mad lad and a disciple of Lord Twigo himself. And I can't forget all of our The One tier patrons, the ones who rise above all other clans, including Alpha Sigma, Pate Hefa, the Red-Haired Fox, Hinokami and Water, the Toasted Chi, Cory McGowan, the Fallen Chosen, Orihime Wukong, Dante Tennell, and Baked Buddhist. Finally, thank you also to our Pro Hero tier patrons, including the one and only Gilgamesh, Angel Cruz, Alicia Octor, Bunny Parks, Fatboy Games, Kaido Might Be a Duck, Ali Vania, and Anime S Code M. If you guys enjoy our videos and you feel that they provide value to you, consider supporting us on Patreon. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, see ya, Space Cowboys!